Alright, people. Review of the week time. So, I would imagine that Oleksandr Usyk, Daniel Dubois is going to be the main talking point for this video. Before we get into that card, before we talk about that, let's talk about the card that really went under the radar. And, I'm guilty of it as well. I completely forgot this was happening this weekend, which was the top ranked card over there. It was in Oklahoma. It was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it was headlined by Jared Anderson versus Andre Rudenko. Rudenko is normally quite durable, but Anderson stopped him. It's only the second stoppage loss of Rudenko's career. Anderson was really in control. Now, some would say maybe that's a sign of Rudenko regressing. He's been in there with Lowe, he's been in there with Huey Fury, Povetkin, Lucas Brown, etc., etc., etc. He's been in with a good few. And he's only been stopped. I think his only two stoppages have come in this fight and his previous loss, which was back in 2021. So, normally quite durable, but he was stopped by Big Baby Anderson. Now, some would say that Rudenko, and I agree with them when they say this, by the way, that Rudenko is a step down from Charles Martin. 100% agree. I think that the Charles Martin fight told them a lot about where Big Baby Anderson is. As good as he is, you don't want to jump the gun too quick with him. He is only 23 years old, so they brought him down a little step. And I reckon they're probably going to look to maybe kind of go back in around the Charles Martin level for his next fight. That's what I would imagine they would do. The opponent he was actually meant to face instead of Charles Martin, which was Zan Kasabutsky, fought F.A. Ajagba. Now, a lot of people will be saying there was... I'll go, right. So basically, this ended in disqualification. Kasabutsky got disqualified for repeated low blows. These were low. Say what you want to say about the Oleksandr Usyk Dubois one. Some people believe it was legal, some say illegal. We'll talk about that more now in a wee bit. Yeah, these looked very low. That Zan Kasabutsky was hitting F.A. Ajagba with. Some would argue that it was in retaliation to low blows that Kasabutsky was saying he was hit by Ajagba. They didn't look low to me. They looked fairly okay, the Ajagba shots. Ajagba was definitely in control of this. Well, not in control per se, but he was having more success. He hurt Zan Kasabutsky a couple of times to the body, and I think he rocked him to the head a few times as well. And in the fourth round, after persistent low blows and consistent warnings from the referee, just called the fight off. So F.A. Ajagba, that's the second disqualification win of his career after Curtis Harper walked out of the ring back in 2018. So F.A. Ajagba moves on. Ajagba is, I've said it once, an interesting talent. Some people say he's limited. He's only a right hand. He's better technically than Deontay Wilder, but he doesn't have Wilder's ferociousness nor his height. I think there's a good fighter there, but I think he needs still a bit of work. I really do. There's a good fighter in F.A. Ajagba, I believe. We also had Bakidir Jalilov. This was his debut with Top Rank and got a first round knockout win. Jalilov is one of the most exciting heavyweight prospects in the world right now. He really is. And I can see this guy is going to cause serious problems for the top 10. It's a shame that probably by the time he's starting to get into the mix or getting title shots, the Usyks, the Furies, the Joshuas, potentially Joshuas as well of the world, will have gone and said see you later to boxing. Because honestly, this guy right now, he's a problem, a serious problem with that left hand for anyone in the top 10 of heavyweight. A serious problem. Really, really big puncher is Bakidir Jalilov. Tremendous puncher. If you've never seen his knockout of Richard Torres, now Richard Torres was a lot younger at the time, and he's still quite young now, but that was a vicious knockout with the left hand in the amateurs. I mean, it really was. You very seldom see knockouts like that in the amateurs. Very seldom. It was a vicious shot. And this guy is a big, big problem. Also, Nico Ali Walsh took an L against a guy called Sana Akil. Now, Nico Ali Walsh had a draw in his last fight, which was actually changed then to a no contest because the guy subsequently, was only announced this week, failed a PED test. I'm not sure if it was Avada or who it was with, but he's taking an L now. Nico Ali Walsh, grandson of Muhammad Ali. And look, seems like a nice kid, but boxing, he is not... he's not the most talented fighter in the world, certainly not. And he's taking an L. I wonder what Bob Arum will do following on from that. So that was the top rank card in a nutshell. They were the fights that really I was interested in. A lot of heavyweight fights on it. Bob Arum and Top Rank, they have a good stable of heavyweights, it has to be said, and some good talent there for the future. So Bob Arum and Top Rank, they are planning ahead. They are really planning ahead. And look, more cards like that, whether it be with Top Rank, Warren, Hearn, loads of good heavyweight fights is just, I think most fans, I know for me certainly it's the case, I love cards full of heavyweights. I love them. I just love the heavyweights. Always been my favourite division. So when I hear a cards with loads of heavyweights on it, I'm happy. In terms of, now I want to talk about this fight. We're going on to the Usyk Dubois card now. Now I didn't see Hamza Shiras' fight, but I heard he was very impressive in a 2-round blowout. Very impressive was Hamza Shiras. But I want to talk about Denis Bacek versus Anthony Yija, which was an okay fight. You know, it was what I started the live watch along with. It was alright. Anthony Yija done well, but ultimately he lost. But he uploaded a video of himself after the fight. Now Anthony Yija had a big swollen eye, and he needed stitches on this eye because he was cut. And this really is disgraceful from K2. If this in fact is really how Anthony Yija was treated. Apparently there was no ambulance for him to go to the hospital with. There was no one after the fight to be able to check him out or administer stitches. He had to go. We had to pretty much force K2 to get him into a hospital, bring him to the doctors, and then once he was there, they just left him. That is disgraceful from K2 if that's true. It really is. If that was in America, if that was in the UK, he would be probably looked at backstage, probably sent to the hospital, have plenty of people there from his team and, you know, from the medical team in the UK, the British Boxing Board of Control, and K2 over there. But I've seen it before over there now, I have to say. Not just in Poland. I've seen it in Russia. I've seen it a lot in some of the Eastern European countries, that the medical care post-fight is not good. You know, if anyone has ever seen, and this was a controversial enough card, what was the guy's name? Oh, what was his name? Ola Afolabi versus Rakim Shakayev. So Ola Afolabi knocked out Rakim Shakayev in 5 rounds. This was a couple of years ago, 2015. And he knocked him out quite badly. And normally when you see a fighter go down face first and slump, they put them in the recovery position, they give him oxygen. They were literally just dragging this guy up and having him walk around the ring. Like, it was like the guy needed to be sat down. He didn't need to be walking around the ring or having people try and lift him up. Like, yeah, here you go, stand up. It was like, Jesus Christ, I mean, that's really not good. So if that's true what Yija is saying, and judging by what I've seen in some of the other countries there with how the medical care is for fighters post-fight, it's not up to standards. It really isn't. If that's true, then that's shocking from K2. It really is, because, you know, for me, like, being, I've only ever been to events in Ireland and the UK, and even in Ireland they have ambulances, everything at the ready to go if needs be, and, you know, not good enough if that is the case from K2. Certainly not. Really, really poor. I mean, the fact is, like, if your guy has got a big swollen eye, he needs to go to the doctor and see that. If he's got stitches, you bring to the doctor. They need to make sure they've got the ambulance ready. Everything is done. Everything's good to go. And the fact that, like, imagine someone on the undercard really was hurt or something like that, and, you know, what would happen then, you know? So that was that. I want to talk about Adam Hamad versus this guy. I can't even pronounce that name, but the son of Prince Nassim made his pro debut, and it was farcical. Like, how in God's name you can even get a gauge on how Hamad was. Like, he was doing some of the movement of his dad, but the guy he was in there with, like, how this guy got a license, I will never know. How he's even got a win to his name by knockout, I will never know. The kid's only 17, and he looked 17. He literally looked like, you know, a string bean in there. And he did get a win over a guy who only had one. Oh man, his only win is against the fellow 17-year-old over there in Czech Republic. So God knows, I mean, what happened there. That was shocking. I mean, where they got the matchmaker for that from is beyond me. It was absolutely shocking. It was embarrassing, really. I mean, for your pro debut, for that was embarrassing. Really, really embarrassing for all involved. You know, I remember Prince Nassim was like, yeah, well done. I'd be like, here, I wouldn't even be celebrating that. That was pretty damn embarrassing. It really was. So that is what happened there. Right. Let's get to the main event. Oleksandr Usyk versus Daniel Dubois. There's a lot of back and forth, and it's dividing a lot of people. The borderline shot, we'll call it. Some are saying it was definitely low. Others are saying it was definitely a legit scoring punch. From what I've seen, and I've seen it back, for me, it's a grey area, because the shorts are up very high, and it's definitely not like in the nether. It's not, you know, in the happy sack, put it like that, by the looks of things. It looks like it's on the belt line. It's borderline. it is a bit of a grey area, right? Because the referee never kind of said, like, is it good here? Is it not good here? Anything like that. From what I've seen in the replay, I think that realistically he probably should have called it a knockdown. Realistically, just judging by from what I can gather, I understand that in that situation you're making a split decision and you kind of just you only get really a glance at it and you kind of just rule. And I suppose as well as that, given the fact that the fighter is motioning that it was low, it kind of probably does sway the referee's decision because he's only probably really getting a bit of a glance at it. The fighter is signaling that it was low and he's probably thinking, oh, what do I do? Yeah, it's low. Okay, no knockdown. Wait 5 minutes, etc. And Usyk made the most of those 5 minutes. For me, had the referee ruled it a knockdown, it would have been interesting to see what would have happened with Oleksandr Usyk because he was definitely badly hurt. Would he have just had to suck it up and get up and try and survive? Yeah, I think he would have had to. It could have been a very different story. But, the word if, I've said this once, I'll say it again. The word if in boxing is a very big word. If is a massive word in the world of boxing. What happened was it was ruled low. The fight was allowed to go on as normal, and Daniel Dubois ultimately ended up getting stopped. Frank Warren is saying he's going to lobby for a rematch and stuff like that. We'll see what happens there. But for me, when I see the fallout of it, so many are adamant that it was a legit shot and that it should have been called a knockdown. And some people are even going out and saying Daniel Dubois has been robbed of the world title and stuff like that. Again, a lot of people do tend to react, very big time react when stuff like this happens. For me, the decision's been made. The referee has called it. He said what he said. He said it was low. As I said, I felt yeah, it's a bit of a grey area because the way the trunks are and how high he had the fell protector up. But at the end of the day, I saw nothing wrong with it personally. I think Oleksandr should say he is a bit lucky that he wasn't given a knockdown on it. Dubois maybe should feel a little bit aggrieved, but that is what that is. In terms of the performance itself, Dubois did, I think, better than most people expected. I kind of expected a performance like that from Daniel Dubois. With Oleksandr Usyk, I actually said it in the prediction video, it wouldn't shock me if people post-fight are saying, Usyk's a bit over the hill. And that's exactly what they've been saying. Because I think everyone's perception was, or a lot of people's perception was, Usyk to just go in and dominate Daniel Dubois. If that was your perception, then absolutely he didn't hit any of those targets, right? But it wasn't my perception, it wasn't a lot of others watching. It was going to be, from my point of view, it was going to be a tricky enough fight. Dubois would have his moments in there. He'd take a couple of rounds. He'd have Usyk think and maybe slow him down as well. And that's kind of why I just got the fight I expected. So for me, I thought it was a fine performance. He did what he needed to do. Dubois, before he was stopped, I think his stock was raising as well because he was fighting with a lot more ferocity, for probably a better word, than Anthony Joshua did. Joshua was just keep with the box and see how it goes. Dubois was trying to force it more than Joshua did. So that is my 2 cents on that. Frank Warren basically said he was cheated out of victory. It hit him on the waistband. The ref got it badly wrong. I like Usyk, but that was a complete hometown decision. He won that fight. Those are the words of Frank Warren. Right, so Frank Warren obviously is saying he's going to be lobbying for the WBA to order an immediate rematch. Personally, I hope they don't, because I would like to just see Undisputed get done, get over the line. I'd like to see Oleksandr Usyk face Tyson Fury next, given the fact that Usyk didn't look as good beating Daniel Dubois as many people predicted. The fact that he showed a little bit of vulnerability there to the body, will that spur Tyson Fury on to say, hang on a minute, you know what, that's all I'm dealing with? Easy work. Will that spur him on? We've seen it in the past with fighters where, Canelo Triple G will be the best example where, Canelo said he wasn't a middleweight for ages, even though he was fighting at 155 pounds, Canelo weight. And then when Triple G fought Daniel Jacobs, and I actually felt Daniel Jacobs won that fight, straight away we get the fight made. Like that, boom, straight away it's made. And, there's been other occasions, I'm sure, as well, where when a fighter has been, maybe not too sure, they see a bit of fragility there, and it's like, right, I'm going to pounce, I'm going to jump on that. Will we see it with Tyson Fury? Look, I want to see undisputed. That is fundamentally what I want to see. I want to see an undisputed heavyweight world title fight. I want to see an undisputed champion. I really don't care who wins. And I've said that once, I'll say it again. I would, even before last night, I would be picking... sorry, I was reading the statement from Daniel Dubois there. I was going to say Daniel Dubois. No, I would be picking Tyson Fury to win the fight. If it was made. Even pre-last night, I would still say Fury probably wins the fight. I think Fury is just a trickier... Not that... I was going to say tricky to work out, but I think he's just more versatile than Joshua, and he's just better than Daniel Dubois. So I think that's why I'd be picking him, amongst other things. So I hope we get that fight over the line. In terms of some of the other news, ESPN are reporting that Gervonta Davis and Isaac Cruz, a rematch is being lined up to happen next. That's why Isaac Cruz is unavailable for the WBC lightweight world title fight. So instead, Shakur Stevens versus Frank Martin has been ordered. Shakur Stevens should win that fight. I would imagine he'd win that fight reasonably comfortably against Frank Martin, who is a good fighter, to be fair. But Shakur Stevens is tremendous. You know, he really, really is tremendous. Shakur Stevenson is just... he's a tremendous fighter. I wouldn't be shocked, though. Rowley is apparently going to fight O'Hara Davis, although we're waiting to see what's happening there. O'Hara Davis better be world champion if that happens. I'm surprised. I would have thought Tank Davis would have jumped on Rowley, done a Rowley rematch, done it on pay-per-view, and then picked up a world title at 140 pounds. Now, in terms of some of the other news we have going in the world of boxing, Robert Helenius on Friday returned an adverse analytical finding. Long and the short of it, that means he failed a PED test. Essentially, that's what it means. With VADA, the day before his KO defeat to Anthony Joshua. So it means now that, well, basically, I would imagine he is going to get something happen to him, a ban or something, God knows. He released a statement and says, I want to say something very clear in my own words right now. Absolutely no exception. I did not use any performance enhancer now or ever. I've been tested my entire career. I was just told that I tested positive for the presence of a non-steroid substance in my system, and I want to send an immediate direct message to Anthony Joshua and the boxing fans that I didn't cheat and never would. I voluntarily worked with VADA and the British Boxing Board of Control to do whatever it takes to clear my name. Interesting. So Helenius returning an analytical finding. He's saying for a non-steroid substance. Okay, what could that be? It could be anything really. So he's basically saying that he's innocent, as most of them do. You know, I think pretty much every person, you know, who's come out has said, look, I'm innocent. We'll see what he does. Obviously, Eddie Hearn has been saying that the more you test, the more you're going to find people, whether they be on matchroom end, like Elisa Baumgardner, or whether they be on the UA end, like Robert Helenius. And, you know, given the fact that so many, and it's really weird because, like, there's more probably popping this year than I think I've remembered in a long, long time. So that's what's happening there. Look, I guess some would argue, and rightfully so, I think that the sport is rampant, whether it be Matchroom, Queensberry, Top Rank, PBC, is rampant with PED usage, and I'm inclined to agree with that. The more testing you do, the harder it becomes to get away from it, the harder it becomes to circumvent it and mask it. So I guess that's probably the only way you could realistically clean it up. As I said, there's always the argument that, well, if everyone's doing it, why not just say, go for it, you know? At the end of the day, they are grown adults. There is a risk to them taking these substances, because I think, you know, it's always... This is the one thing about PED usage that's not really talked about enough. People always talk about the risk to the opponent, right? When, say, someone like, you know, with Robert Helenius, Lisa Baumgardner, etc., if the fight happens or the fight takes place, they always say, what about the opponent? What about people taking them? Because what's the long-term damage that's sustained? Like, you look at someone like Jarrell Miller, and some of the things he's been taking, you know, what's the long-term damage they're doing to themselves as well at the end of the day? You know, that's something that isn't talked about enough, because, you know, I think Jarrell Miller had HGH and other stuff like that. And, you know, you look at Conor McGregor, and you look at the way he looked a couple of... I know that's obviously not boxing, but you look at the way he looked a couple of years ago to the way he looks now. I mean, he looks drastically different. He looks old. Really, really, really old. He looks not well at all, to be honest with you. So you got to wonder. I mean, I don't think that's talked about enough, what they're doing. But at the same time, they're grown adults. At the end of the day, it's their bodies. So Nah, that's the situation with Robert Helenius. Failed VADA test essentially. I would imagine that the result will stay the same, because some people were asking, does that mean it will change to a no contest? No, it normally, if the fighter loses, it normally just stays the same. If it's a draw or the fighter who fails wins, then you normally start to see it, changed around a little bit. For the most part, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And that's normally the way it is. So Helenius, I would imagine the result will stay the same. But what happens next there, I really don't know. Some fights have been announced for the Canelo Alvarez versus Jamel Charlo undercard. Jesus Ramon versus Erickson Lubin. Always enjoy seeing Erickson Lubin. That's going to be a good fight. Elijah Garcia versus Armando Rizengi. Okay. And Yordenis Ugas versus Mario Barros. Looking like a good card, PBC. I've got a lot of criticisms of PBC. I think rightfully so. But goddamn, when they put cards on, especially pay-per-view, they don't mess around. They put some seriously good fights on. They put some seriously good undercard fights on. So those undercards on PBC, I mean, they're good. They're real good. They're real good. Now, I see Jay Opetaia was announced this week that he'll defend his IBF Cruiserweight World titles at the Wembley Arena on September the 30th, my birthday. So I get a nice little card for the birthday. I won't be at it, by the way. I'm not going over for my birthday. And yeah, I wouldn't be going. No, I just won't be going over for that, no. But, I know Wembley Arena, it's a nice little arena. But he's fighting Jordan Thompson, I should say. Now, Jordan Thompson's been, he's alright. But I think this is maybe a step too soon for him to be going in there with Jay Opetaia. Jay Opetaia will have to make, as far as I believe, a mandatory defence sooner or later against Myris Bradis. It was originally supposed to be Richard Riakporhe. We know what happened there. Boxer and Ben Shalom just deciding, no, we don't like purse bids. Alright. So they've gone their separate, well, not gone their separate ways, but I would imagine that it's going to be Bill Smith versus Riakporhe 2 for the WBO title. That's probably what Ben Shalom is going to do. And instead, we are going to have to see a rematch between Bradis versus Opetaia. It's not a terrible fight. The first fight was very good, but the fact is, though, like, Bradis hasn't fought anyone since. Like, he's not had a fight since. So just being made mandatory challenger without having to do anything is a bit kind of like, really? And Tim Tszyu, there was a fight announced for him that he's going to be fighting Brian Mendoza October 15th in Australia. This is interesting. It says here, winner will not only be world champion, but also remain mandatory for Jamel Charlo's interim title. Okay, so I can't see Charlo come back down to 154, so someone could become so like, put it like this, right? If Tim Tszyu wins, which I expect him to, he'll be WBO champion, and when Charlo eventually does decide, I ain't coming back down, he'll get upgraded. He'll be unified champion, essentially. Which, I would, as I said, I would have liked to have seen him just do it, get it, go in there with Charlo and see how you get on. So, but that is what that is. I still see people talking about this John Fury thing. And obviously John Fury, people are going on about him at the press conference for KSI versus Tommy Fury. That fight's happening in October. The whole John Fury thing, I mean, I've said it about John Fury once, I'll say it again. He goes into a room with the intention of being loud, abrasive, and just his bark being worse than his bite. That's the best way you can say it with John Fury. He goes in there, tries to intimidate people by being the loudest, goes in and, who wants it? And obviously a lot of people in those rooms are just like, oh, stay away from him. But it's becoming old now. At times early on when John Fury was doing that, it was kind of funny. It was kind of just like, it's a bit of a laugh. When he squared up to Wilder in Belfast, Wilder thought it was a joke. I think everyone did. John Fury wasn't joking. But I was listening to Dell's video on it, and he was saying, John Fury would do that when there's security everywhere stopping them, right? And, John Fury makes a lot of claims, certainly a lot of claims, and I think that's one reason why John Fury, people, how would I describe it? People like John Fury because they see a bit of them in him. Because I notice it myself, a lot of people I know make some bizarre claims. And the weirdest thing is people flipping believe them. Like, I'm just not talking just in general, in life. It's like, I hear stories from some of my friends, and it's just like, what? Yeah, this is true. I'm telling you, just like, right, red flags left, right, and centre here. But yeah, other ones just seem. But some of my other friends, when they hear the same story, they're like, "Did that really?" They don't even like bat an eyelid. And it's like, I heard a story on Friday. I'm not going to go into it, but I was like, right, that's just one of the stupidest things I ever heard. And the fact that you believe it, I was talking to my mate, and I was like, then I was listening to what Dale was saying in his video, and I was like, do you know what? That is literally what John Fury is doing. Just saying that he had a bare knuckle fight for 100 grand. And he remembers that, but he can't remember the name of the guy. It's like, really? Come on. I don't buy that. You know, when I was in college in 2015, I was literally, I think I had 180 quid to my name at one time. And I remember my friend was working in the bookies. I put €2.50 on a 12-team football accumulator. I won 2.5 grand, right? And I remember it well because it was Jurgen Klopp's first weekend as Liverpool manager. Liverpool beat Chelsea 3-1. I was going to put Liverpool down on that accumulator. I think they were 3-1 to win. So God knows I could have got maybe over 3 grand. And he talked me out of it. And I remember everything about that because you're in college. I had about 180 quid to my name. Here's 2.5 grand. I was like, what? This is amazing. It was a good story. But I remember that. Whereas John Fury is saying he had a bare knuckle fight for 100 grand and he can't remember the guy's name. Really? I remember that. I remember exactly where I was and what happened. Jurgen Klopp, that Chelsea game was the 12 o'clock kickoff. I remember it well. Or the 1 o'clock kickoff. It was the kickoff before the main games. And they won 3-1. I think they were playing in I think it was actually in Anfield, that game. But nevertheless, they won 3-1. Never forget it. Won 2.5 grand. I was delighted with myself. So, believe me, if there are stories that are really, that are real, you remember especially something like that, you remember everything about it. Whereas John Fury would say, I did it, blah, blah, blah. All right, against who? I can't remember. It's like, really? And, but that's kind of how I see a lot of people nowadays. It's like, oh, this happened to me and this and all this and this and this. And like, who are you with? Some random lad you don't know. All right, of course. Brilliant. So I think that is why people seem to flock towards John Fury and like him. They see a bit of themselves there in him. In terms of everything else, I think that's pretty much it. I really think that's pretty much it. In terms of everything else, like I said, that's the main bulk of the news. It wasn't a crazy week in terms of news breaking left, right and centre and stuff like that. The main talking point was obviously going to be Oleksandr Usyk, Daniel Dubois. I give him my 2 cents on it. It's a bit of a grey area, that shot. Some would say it's low, some would say it's borderline. I would say it's borderline, to be honest with you. Well, look, it is what it is. I'm not going to turn around and say Dubois should be world champion, he's blah, 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 blah. No, because again, if is the big word. You don't know if a referee had administered a count, would Usyk have just said, right, the hell with it, I'll get up, in pain, but I'll still get up and I'll try and hold. As I say, if is a very big word in the world of boxing. That's what I got to say on that. That's my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. For now, lads and lassies, I will leave you with that. I hope you all have a great week. I hope we all get some good news this week, myself included. I always say that because I'm always hoping that some of you guys do get good news. Let this video be the start of it. I appreciate all the support. 12,500 subs. We're getting closer. We're not that far off 12,600. We only need another about 50 subs and we're there. So 13k as quick as we can. Onwards to 14, onwards to 15. And obviously next year is the real gut test. We're planning to move to London starting next year. And that's going to be the real good test. That's where we're going to really see what we're made of with this channel and other events and stuff like that. So we're all looking forward to that. Lads, I hope you're happy. I hope you all have a great video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope you all have a great week. Everyone's keeping well. Smash the like button. Hit subscribe. I'll talk to you. Peace.